Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.com. Let's take a look at which MacBook you should buy. MacMost is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to MacMost.com/Patreon. There you could read more about the Patreon campaign, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. Now if you're looking to buy a new Mac soon, it's important to know the different models that are available. In the last video I talked about the desktop Macs, the Mac Mini, iMac, and Mac Studio. In this video I'm going to talk about the MacBook models. It's a pretty big difference between whether you want a portable or a desktop. So I'm going to assume if you're watching this that you're interested in a portable Mac. So like with the desktops, there are really three main models that you can consider. There's the MacBook Air, the 14-inch MacBook Pro, and the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Yes, there is another MacBook Pro and I'll talk about that later. Let's start with the MacBook Air. This is the low-end model. It's the most consumer-friendly one. It's the lowest price. It also has the least number of features. It starts off at a very reasonable price of $1,200. The problem with the $1,200 model is that it comes with a very small hard drive. I always warn people against getting the smallest drive. 256 gigs is just too small for almost anybody unless you don't use any photos, don't do any video work, nothing. You just use the web and email. Most people are going to want more than this. But it is the cheapest portable Mac you can get, and it's a pretty decent machine. It's got the M2 processor in it, but even with the M1 processor it still was pretty powerful. And a base model Mac with an M1 or M2 shouldn't be seen as kind of low end or a toy or just for like a home user. This is something that's actually pretty powerful and you could do a lot of things with it. But I do recommend at least going one step up to get a bigger drive. So if we look at the upgraded M2, we get the same amount of memory and a 1 terabyte drive. Then the price jumps to $1,700. In addition to the larger drive, which is going to be much better for just about any use, you are going to get a slightly better M2 processor. There's actually two levels of the base M2 processor. One of them has fewer GPUs than the other, so you're actually getting a better processor and a bigger drive here. Now I know a lot of people say getting 8 gigs is a mistake, it's too small. But I've been using an 8 gigabyte M1 MacBook Pro for a while now. I have thoroughly tested it using a variety of software. Stuff like Final Cut Pro and ScreenFlow and numbers with complex spreadsheets and all of that. And it works really well. Maybe it wouldn't work so well if you fill up the hard drive completely so you don't have that much space for swap and you try to do 15 different things at once, 20 Chrome tabs open with complex pages and all of that. But if you use it with reasonable expectations of using a few apps at the same time, getting things done, maybe not expecting to run several big powerful apps at the same time, then 8 gigabytes is fine. macOS actually manages memory very well. Now saving money isn't the only reason to get a MacBook Air. It's also the thinnest, lightest, and has a really good look to it. So you may want to get a MacBook Air even if you can afford more. In that case, look at getting a high-end upgraded version. It's the same M2 processor but 16 gigs of RAM and get a 2 gig drive. The price is $2,300 for this, but it's a pretty powerful, lightweight, easy to bring with you machine. So let's move on to the MacBook Pros. There are essentially two models of the MacBook Pro that vary mostly because of the screen. You've got a 14-inch screen and a 16-inch screen. The advantage of the 14-inch screen is it's still a pretty lightweight machine. It's only a little bit heavier than the MacBook Air in reality, whereas the 16-inch model is definitely heavier, it's definitely bigger, it's going to be harder to carry around, but it has more screen space, of course. So you really need to figure out what you want, because if you want a MacBook Pro but you want to keep it light, then 14 inches for you. If you want big screen space and you don't mind the extra weight, then 16 inches for you. Now the base model is $2,000 and it comes with an M1 Pro processor in it, which of course is more powerful than the M1, but also you have to remember it's more powerful than the M2 processor as well. It comes with a base of 16 gigs of RAM, so you're getting more memory there. And you also get a 512 gig SSD, which I'm still going to warn against. I think that's still too small, especially if you're not considering the Air but you're considering getting a MacBook Pro, then 512 gigs is probably too little. You want to go to at least 1 terabyte. So I would go to the reasonable one, which is the same model, same everything, except a 1 terabyte drive for a little bit more. Because if you're getting a MacBook Pro, you want to have the drive space to do what you need to do. Now if you want to go high end, you can. You can go to the M1 Max processor, which is even more powerful than the M1 Pro, and of course leaves the M1 and the M2 base CPUs in the dust. Now, this one comes with 32 gigs of RAM. That's the minimum with the M1 Max. And I'm suggesting getting at least a 2 terabyte drive with it. But you can see the price is up there at $3,500 for this one. Now let's take a look at the 16-inch models. The only reason to really go and get the low-end 16-inch model is if screen size is the most important thing to you. Maybe you edit graphics, for instance, and you just need a lot of screen real estate. So, getting the M1 Pro model, 16 gigs of RAM, the small drive, really too small if you're getting this type of Mac, is going to run $2,500. A more reasonable one is $200 more, going with the 1 terabyte drive. Now you have a pretty decent machine that a lot of professionals could use. At this point, if you're doing video editing, it's a really good machine because the 16-inch screen gives you the ability to see all of the different parts of Final Cut Pro or whatever software you're using. And the 1 terabyte drive gives you the space to do what you want. But if you want to go higher end than that, then you want to go to the upgraded 16-inch model, which has the M1 Max processor, 32 gigs of RAM, and that is plenty for just about anything, and a 2 terabyte drive. Now, of course, you can go higher on the amount of memory if you really want, but just like with all the desktop Macs, I want to say that the first thing you should spend money on is more storage. I so often hear from people having trouble because they bought a drive that was too small. They can't have all their files local. It's got to be using the iCloud Optimize feature, or they have to have external drives which are going to be much slower to access files, and of course with MacBooks difficult to bring with. It's much more critical you get a drive big enough to hold what you need now, but also years from now as you're using larger files and doing more with your Mac. Memory would be next. More memory is better, but as I said before, Macs really manage memory well, and you can do with smaller memory as long as you don't run out of storage space. Now, what about the 13-inch MacBook Pro? That just got a new version with an M2 processor in it. Well, the main advantages of a 13-inch MacBook Pro over a MacBook Air are two things. One is there are fans in the MacBook Pro. Now, the advantage of fans is that it can keep the processor cooler. You've got this powerful M2 processor in it, but it, of course, is not going to work as well if it gets hot. Fans will keep it cooler, and there are no fans in the MacBook Air. The only thing is that with my M1 MacBook Pro, I got it because of the fans, and I can rarely ever get the fans to go on. Matter of fact, the only times I've ever gotten the fans to go on is when I purposely tried to do it by running lots of complex calculations or rendering really complex videos while doing other things as well. So it hasn't been an issue like I thought. Also, the 13-inch MacBook Pro has the Touch Bar. Apple got rid of the Touch Bar on the higher end MacBook Pros and the lower end MacBook Airs. So what's it doing on this model? Well, it's probably there just because they picked up the design of the previous 13-inch MacBook Pro. I still don't see a future for the Touch Bar. If you really love the Touch Bar and you want to get what might be the last Mac model with that on it, then maybe the 13-inch MacBook Pro is for you. But in general, the Touch Bar gets mixed reviews and it has no future. So I'm not really sure why the 13-inch MacBook Pro exists. It seems like if you want a MacBook Pro, you get the 14-inch MacBook Pro, and that's your low end. If you want anything below that, you get the MacBook Air. So I've made up a chart here so you can see the differences between the models. There are three groups: the MacBook Air, the 14-inch, and then the 16-inch MacBook Pro. And you can see the three different ones I've spec'd out for each. So you've got on the low end, that low end MacBook Air. You've got a more reasonable model. I think in the case of the MacBook Air, the high end is justified if you really like the form factor, and then you can max it out with 16 gigs of RAM and a 2 terabyte drive. Otherwise, if you want more power, you go with the MacBook Pros because they have the M1 Pro or M1 Max processors in them, and they're very comparable. And the 14-inch and the 16-inch, really, it just comes down to if you want the bigger screen size, sacrificing weight and carry size. That should make it easy to decide between the 14 and 16-inch. But then added to that, the 16-inch, of course, is going to cost you more because of the bigger screen. So you just really need to know where to put the price point. There are a few other things you want to consider when deciding between a MacBook Air and a MacBook Pro. MacBook Air being the cheaper consumer model. doesn't have as much capability when it comes to screens and displays. For instance, you can only hook up one external screen to a MacBook Air. So you've got your MacBook Air screen and you can hook up, say, a 4K display to that. You can go more than the one external display using workarounds, but the quality drops. You're not getting the full extra screen experience when you go with more than one, and you have to buy usually additional hardware or software to do that. However, the MacBook Pros all can use two external displays in addition to the one that's part of the MacBook itself. And if you go with the models that have the M1 Max in them, you can go 3 or 4 external displays depending upon the size of the displays themselves. Also, the MacBook Pros have better screens attached to them. They can use XDR, which means they're going to be brighter and they're going to have more contrast, and ProMotion, which means their refresh rate is much faster. So a much better display if you're doing video work, then the MacBook Pro has a distinct advantage in how good the display is. But that's pro video work. If you're just editing your home videos, it probably really doesn't matter which one you have. Also, the ports are a little different. The MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro both have the MagSafe adapter, so power is its own port. But the MacBook Air just has 2 Thunderbolt ports. That's pretty much it. On the MacBook Pro, you've got 3 Thunderbolt ports. And these, of course, you could use for USB, for instance, and displays and all sorts of things. There's also an HDMI port and an SD card slot with the MacBook Pro. So if you need a lot of ports and you don't want to rely on a dock, then there's an advantage for the MacBook Pro as well. Much later this year or next year, we can expect Apple to come out with an M2 Pro and M2 Max for upgraded 14 and 16-inch models. But keep in mind, going from M1 to M2 is probably going to only increase speed maybe about 25% if you go with the difference between the M1 and the M2. And that probably only really matters at high-end stuff. So things like surfing the web, checking emails, and even editing video while you're actually doing the editing is probably not going to change much with getting a new processor. So you have to figure out whether it's worth the wait, especially if you really need a new machine now. Don't be deceived by the numbers and think that M2 is twice as good as M1. It doesn't work like that. It's just moving up one generation. There's a small incremental speed increase, and Apple's going to keep going with those, and we'll have M3, M4, and so on. But in general, it's much more important to look at whether it's the standard M1 or M2, the M1 Pro, the M1 Max, or the M1 Ultra when getting a Mac. Going from the standard to the Pro is a big leap, Pro to Max is a big leap, and Max to Ultra is a big leap, much more so than going from M1 to M2. So I think the decision is actually a lot easier when you're looking at MacBooks, because either you're going to want kind of the consumer model or the lightweight model MacBook Air. I'm going to get one myself because I have a desktop machine and I want a lightweight companion that can go with me as I travel. If you're using a MacBook as your main machine, then the 14 and 16 inch are probably what you want to look at. And from there, it's just deciding on the screen size. Hope this helps with your decision. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.